to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I take pleasure in watching the wild birds around me, wherever I am. In my show, I share the joy of birding. I tell you about the birds I've seen, speak with experts and enthusiasts, go on bird outings, and I share stories from birders around the world. Joining us this episode is someone familiar to wildlife lovers around the world, Simon King. As a celebrated naturalist and award-winning wildlife filmmaker, Simon has spent decades capturing the raw beauty and drama of the natural world. From tracking big cats in Africa to filming otters in Shetland, and through many other wildlife encounters, his work has brought us closer to nature. Recently, he played a key role in the production of the wonderful natural history TV series Wild Isles, both as series consultant and as one of the principal filmmakers. Simon tells me how he developed his lifelong passion for nature and shares some of his most memorable birding moments. Our conversation was recorded in front of a live audience at Global Bird Fair. Simon, thank you so much for joining me on the Casual Birder podcast. It's an absolute thrill to meet you. I've watched many of your series over the years, and I'm really excited to hear what birds you love seeing. Could you tell us a little bit about how you started out and why you chose conservation?
The way I describe myself always is as a naturalist. That's what I am. And I'm a lucky one in the sense that my interest has always been indulged by my career. Not many people can say that, but I am one of those. And so the first flirtation I had with broadcast was when I was 10 years old. I'm now 60, so that was 50 years ago. And I was involved in television dramas, but always associated with the natural world. And I've just always been a paid-up geek. I'm very happy to confess to that. And my passion for the natural world has never waned. If anything, it's intensified. And I became a full-time professional filmmaker at the age of 17. So I did my then O-levels, now GCSEs, and I did have the option. It's not as though I completely flunked everything. I had the option to go on and continue with further education and chose, because, again, and I put this down to great good fortune, having a passion that was with such clarity, I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't know I wanted to do it in filmmaking, to be fair. I just knew I wanted to work in the natural world. And because of my already some history with television, the natural step was to try and work as a camera operator. And that's what I did. So the first television experiences when I left school was as a camera operator for what was then, I think the first full-length film I made was for what was called it wasn't called The Natural World, it was called The World About Us, and it became The Natural World on the BBC. Since then I've been either filming wildlife or writing about wildlife or photographing wildlife or guiding people to watch wildlife ever since, and I do that to this day.
What was the first moment for you that drew you to the natural world?
You know, that's impossible for me to answer because I cannot remember an epiphany. All I know is I was always passionate, and I really think that most kids are. And my question, which I have to say is a bit of plagiarism because Sir David came up with this one, is when did you lose your interest? Because I think most people have it. Most people at a young age are naturally interested in other life forms, and I call them other people, using the traditional, Greek reference of the phrase. And so I've always been interested in other people, whatever the species, and been lucky enough to, I suppose, weather the bullying where people think you're a geek and you shouldn't be out watching birds. And I thought, I don't care, I'm going to do what I do, I love it. And to get past that stage where I suppose you can be isolated and marginalised with an interest that some people see as that, marginal, and keep it. I'm glad that today there's less stigma associated with an interest in the real world. If anything, people are being seen as wildlife heroes, and that's great because we need that. We need people who are connected to what I refer to as the real world to step up and be counted and to actually lead the way, because without people noticing change, we are going to fall down into the abyss. We all know this. And you only notice change if you know what you're looking at. And sadly, I'm afraid to say, the vast majority of people still do not know what's out there. And so we have a constantly shifting baseline that no one can refer back to. No one knows that there should be cuckoos in every hedgerow, which there were when I was a kid, virtually. And there aren't anymore. And so we need more and more people to be interested enough to know what it is that they're listening to, what it is they're seeing, so that we do note change, we do care, we do have a passion for it, and we do change the way we live as a consequence.
That's so interesting to hear you say that. One of the things that concerns me a lot is sometimes you can feel like we're a bit helpless and there's so much going on, and what can we as individuals do?
I mean, we do need a paradigm shift in society across the planet, generally. And I say that glibly in the sense that there are, of course, communities who do it right, but they tend to do it right by force rather than because of decision-making. Generally speaking, those with the option to do it right don't. And we are, the British Isles or Britain and Ireland are a shining example of getting it wrong a lot. Look at the denuded nature in Britain. We are one of the most nature-impoverished nations in the world, and we haven't really got a lot to shout about, despite the fact we still do have magnificent natural history within Britain and Ireland. As I hope folk, I've been working on a series called Wild Isles over the past 5 years, which showcased some of that. But as Sir David, who presented the series, said repeatedly, this is a tiny fragment of what there once was. It can come back, but we are at a tipping point. And if we don't step and make changes, and this is to do with, you say about being empowered and what we do, we can all make changes. We can all make little changes that make a massive difference. It's to do with what we eat, where we go, how far we go, what we do with our lives. And we all make mistakes, and I do all the time as well. But I'm conscious of them, as opposed to just blindly going about my business as though they have no consequence. Every pound that you spend, every pound that I spend has an impact on the planet, and where you spend it makes a difference. And if you think that way, yes, you know if you're making a poor choice and you live with it, and you also know if you're making a better choice.
I asked Simon how we can encourage people to take notice of the natural world. Is there anything we can do to get them switched onto it at a local level?
If one could grab people bodily and drag them into this is going to sound really weird, but drag them into the hedgerows, then yes. And I've had the great good fortune to do this with school groups in really impoverished inner city regions, with young people who literally didn't know what a beetle was, i.e. what is that thing? Not what beetle is it, but what is it? Who had never seen a nettle or felt a stinging nettle, which is tragic. And it's not just to do with the way that society has gone broadly. It's a tremendous amount to do with fear from large organisation and from large bodies. As a kid, I would be climbing trees all the time. I still do. Now, if a tree is in a schoolyard that might be climbed, it's cut down because of fear of a health and safety problem that a kid might fall out and hurt themselves. You learn not to fall out of trees by scraping your knees. That's how it happens. I'm not saying let's break lots of legs. I'm just saying let's be real about this. I had a horrific encounter years ago with a school group in inner city London who came out on a photo call. It was for a conservation campaign, and the school provided them with blue latex gloves before we went pond dipping. To which I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we have to do this." And I said, "Why?" Because there might be Weil's disease. I said, "Well, yeah, there could be Weil's disease, but you're going to now make these kids terrified of literally putting a pond dipping net in a pond and picking out some tadpoles. This is absolutely crazy." So, I think the approach to change has to be manifold, and how you change attitude is to first of all make things not terrifying and to ensure that they are it's not a scary place, and then by ambassadors, whoever they may be, getting in there and actively introducing people to the natural world. And that can be done using the various media that we have available to us. I mean, there's nothing, my association and ambassadorship of the wildlife community is a good example of that, which is an online facility. Yeah, it has a shop. Yes, there are ways of going in there and if you like, finding mitigations for wildlife in your own garden space. That's part of it. That's how it exists and how it can run. But it also has a lot more. It's got a load of information. It's got resources. It's got feedback. It's got a forum. And the idea in the title, the name, the wildlife community, is just that, trying to bring everybody in using a contemporary medium, i.e. the internet, to give people a portal, a way into the natural world that they may not otherwise easily find. And through that, they'll find people, like-minded people, probably right next door, or if not 3 doors down, that they didn't even know existed, and start campaigns to not cut the verge and not cut the wildflowers on the roundabout in your neighbourhood. Ultimately, the system works for us, not the other way around. And we just have to step up and take that responsibility seriously as a community.
So much I'm hearing nowadays from people is that we do need to start at the local level, because by us building those blocks at the local level, we'll then have an influence of the habitats as well. I want to bring it back to birds, and I know you've had some amazing birding experiences. Can you tell me of one that has brought you particular joy?
Gosh, I've had, as you rightly say, so many encounters with the avian community, which have been special for me. If I think back to maybe not epiphanies, but moments that burn bright in my memory, one would certainly be as a kid. I used to live on the edge of Bristol and was always thrilled, as most people are, by raptors, by birds of prey. Had a local pair of sparrowhawks. I knew where they nested. But watching sparrowhawks hunting isn't something that's always, well, it's certainly not predictable. You might suddenly see an explosion of feathers in the back garden near the bird feeder, and it's all over in a nanosecond. But on this particular occasion, I was standing in the front garden, and I noted that at the time there was a very, very healthy population of house sparrows, and they were chirping crazily. And I looked up, because I'd already begun at that stage, even though I was, I don't know, probably 9 or 10, but I'd begun to learn their language, and I knew they were upset about something. Looked up, and I saw a sparrowhawk, a female sparrowhawk, who was circling high overhead. And that was impressive to me, because they're a beautiful bird. And I watched it towering, going higher and higher and higher, and drifting away, quite a long way away, maybe half a kilometre or more, downwind. And I thought, well, it's obviously nothing to do with these sparrows. But I kept watching her. And then I saw her come into a plummet dive, a proper fold-up stoop, and lost sight of her behind the roofs of houses. And I thought, OK, well, that's that. And then about 25, 30 seconds later, she appeared solo, right next to me, shot past my ear almost, landed on the top of the bush where the sparrows were. So what she'd been doing is watching where her prey was, working out her strategy, going downwind, coming in, using the cover of the buildings, the gardens, the hedges, and appeared. So these sparrows were now thinking they were safe, chirping in the bush with her standing on top. And she looked down into the bush with a group of sparrows, what looked like maybe 3 or 4 feet below her, and then seemed to have a go-go gadget right leg, which just extended down into the bush, grabbed a male sparrow, brought it up, and flew off. And that I shall always remember as a privileged exposure to a bird that is mercurial, often seen by people who know what they're looking at, but not often seen doing what they do best. So very, very, very special. But I also had, for those people who are interested in seeing rarities, I had a fabulous mentor, a guy called Mike Kendall, who sadly passed away some time ago. But Mike and I made a television series, in fact 2, called Man and Boy. People used to think he was my dad. He wasn't. My dad actually produced the series, but Mike was the person in vision with me. But Mike was a genuine naturalist and mentor, and used to take me out on the weekend to go bird watching. And I can remember going to a quarry in Cheddar to see a wall creeper, and going somewhere else to see another species. I never quite got into the travelling to see rarities thing. It's not really my thing. I love seeing whatever species wherever I encounter it, but I tend not to travel so much. But it was at the time it was really exciting to be told what this thing was, where it came from, how rare it was. That was exciting.
And now you lead tours, and I'm going to make an assumption here that you get joy from sharing what you know with the people that come on the tours with you.
Very much.
What is your special moments on those sorts of tours?
Well, of course, sometimes, the encounter itself is enough and I have to say nothing. I've had a tour last year in Shetland, and we had a fabulously close encounter with orcas with a group of 10 people, I think. And we were within, 15, 20 metres of the entire pod that were hunting seals just underneath us. Sometimes the event itself is sufficient just to speak for itself. What I really enjoy, though, is interpreting what otherwise people might walk past. And unraveling behaviour that's occurring, subtleties of courtship, subtleties of voice, of what it is we're listening to. Sometimes get everyone to shut their eyes and just listen so that we can pick out. Now, of course, we can all use apps like the Merlin, which is fabulous, but it's still, whilst it, and I do endorse it, I think it's a fantastic advance in the technology that we can hold in our phones and in our pockets. But there's something, I suppose there's another level when you're with someone who does understand the language, not just what it is, not the species, but as I mentioned earlier with the sparrows, what it's saying. So I generally will be able to say, I think there's a hobby coming. I haven't seen the hobby, but I can hear what the hirundines, what the swallows and what the house martins are saying, and I know that their language is so specific that they are telling me not just it's a raptor, but it's a raptor that's dangerous to them, and that they're communicating with each other. So I love those moments, those serendipitous moments, and they always occur. That's the beauty of it. You know, when I do have guests with me, I can't remember having any trip, be it a day trip, a week or more, where we haven't had very, very special moments for me as well. And as you say, sharing it with people who might not get as much opportunity as I do. And seeing the joy, and in fact, I was speaking to someone earlier who came out with me a few weeks ago to Leighton Moss, and apparently they've not stopped talking about it. Their sister said, well, she hasn't stopped talking about it. It's been, which is lovely.
Absolutely, and I'm really fascinated by what you say there about learning the language of the birds, so that you know what's going on with them. I mean, I do that to a certain extent with my garden birds. I know when, blackbirds are upset by certain things, magpies are upset by certain things. You know the call that relates to a particular threat or a particular situation. I love that reminiscence that you had about the sparrowhawk. I've witnessed parts of that, but never a complete sequence, but I can visualize it totally as you described it. And yeah, that really does bring another level to the observations that you make when you can have spent the time with a species and learned that aspect of them. It just rounds out your knowledge of them and just you feel more connected to them.
No, completely. And it is the point that you made, feeling part of it. You don't have to do these things. You don't have to know this to enjoy spending time in the natural world. But I personally feel, I learn all the time. I will never not learn. Until I draw my last breath, I'll be learning. And the more I learn, the more included I am in the world about me, as opposed to excluded. I know, I'm very lucky to have very, very close human-loving relationships, but I will never be alone, ever, because I will always have a community of other living things around me who I feel are part of my world. I don't feel apart from them. And the more I know them, the more I understand them, the closer I feel. And that only comes with time and learning, as it does with people.
So it sounds like you're saying from the learning and from constantly sort of observing that you still find a thrill in whatever aspect of nature you're involved in.
Always. Whether I'm filming, I do a lot of camera work still. I've just come back from Norway. I can't tell you what I'm filming because that's not going to come out for a few years, but I've just come back from Norway. I'm about to go to Canada. Then I'm going to Tanzania. And so they're all for different aspects of the natural world, all of which I love. But as well as doing the camera work, I'm always learning something new about, even if it's a species or a number of species I'm very familiar with or I think I'm familiar with, there will always be something fresh, always something new. And being able to hopefully translate that through the medium of television or whatever screen to others, I find still exciting because it's a story. I like telling stories. It's trying to unravel those narratives and to then share them in a way that, first of all, is engaging, because if you're not engaging people, you've failed because they've already switched over to one of the other 7,000 channels that are available. But secondly, it's not about being trite. It's staying true, keeping integrity, being honest, but spotting where the story is. Where does this narrative make me like the sparrowhawk encounter? I couldn't possibly predict that, and I couldn't film it because it's a one-off. I've never seen that entire event since. I've seen sparrowhawks killing other birds, but I haven't seen the whole process. And that's 60 years of close observation. So I just know that wherever I go in whatever capacity, whether it's guiding, whether it's working as a camera operative, or whether it's working as in production or anything else, or writing about it, or taking still photographs, which I also do, I'm always I am always learning. It happens by default, and I can apply that learning to the next encounter, I hope.
Do you ever just sit and listen and watch?
I do. I sit and listen. I'm lucky enough to live in the Outer Hebrides, and so I have the opportunity sometimes, not very often recently, but sometimes, either on my own or with my partner, to just spend time surrounded by the real world. And if I'm brutally honest, selfishly, I probably wouldn't take any photographs, wouldn't film anything, wouldn't write anything, and may not take anybody else out to see anything, because I get the most joy, very selfishly, out of being either with one person who is close to me or on my own, watching the real world play out in front of me. But maybe I'm being a little disingenuous there, because there is an element of I suppose satisfaction, achievement perhaps. I hate that word because I don't think I've ever achieved anything, but a personal sense of achievement. If I've had a vision of something in a still photograph, I also paint, so that's not very public yet, but maybe down the road I'll start showing those to people. Seeing something I want to share with other people through whatever medium, and then trying to get that vision, whatever it is that's in my mind's eye from my observations, to find its way through the medium of a still photograph or a painting or a bit of writing.
Hopefully inspiring them to take
that's
notice.
The point, yeah.
Just finally then, I'd like to ask you, if you had an opportunity to go anywhere in the world to see any bird on a fantasy birding day, where would you go? What would you do? What would you see?
Well, I'd be at home in the Outer Hebrides, for sure, probably with my partner, certainly with my partner, and I would be probably lying on the beach, which is a white sand beach directly in front of the house. I'd have a good mixed flock of waders, so I'd have all the ring plovers, the godwits, the curlew, redshank, everybody would be in front of me, oyster catchers. I'm lying, probably getting a bit wet and cold on this sand, and then a white-tailed eagle will come over, because they do, and then a hen harrier will come and hunt the flock, because they do, then a peregrine will come, because they do, then a merlin will flush by, because they do, and then an otter will walk up the beach, because they do, and then I go back, have a nice hot cup of tea.
Fantastic. And maybe an orca in the background.
They sadly on the west coast, the orca population is diminished.
Yeah.
There's just two big bulls that
it's
come
a
by.
Fantasy day.
Okay.
They can be there.
So the 27 pod, who tend to hang out on the east coast around Shetland and down the east, they've come all the way around the top, and they come hammering down into the bay in front of us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the Casual Birder podcast. I've really enjoyed hearing your reminiscences and your fantasy birding day as well.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
To find out more about Simon and the wildlife community, check out the links in the episode notes. My thanks to Oscar Henderson for handling the production of the episodes at Global Bird Fair, and to Charlie Bingham for scheduling the guests. Global Bird Fair takes place this year between the 11th and 13th of July, and once again it'll be at Leyden Top in Rutland. The event provides a wonderful opportunity to hear talks from top wildlife experts and people passionate about the conservation they work in. There's also the opportunity to try out binoculars and scopes, and maybe be enticed to consider dream vacations to key birding destinations around the world. It's also a wonderful showcase for those who create beautiful wildlife art. But one of the best parts of Global Bird Fair for me is that it's a fabulous place to meet up with old friends and make new ones. I'll be there all 3 days, along with a big lineup of nature podcasters, and we'll be presenting live episodes all weekend. Put the date in your diary. I really hope I'll meet you there. You'll be able to recognise me, as I'll be wearing a t-shirt or hat with my podcast artwork on. So don't be shy, come over and say hello. And I'll have a little gift for you to say thanks for being a listener of the show. For further information about Global Bird Fair and to buy tickets, check out the link in the episode notes. Tell me about your bird stories. You can contact me on my website casualbirder.com. My thanks to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.